Okay, guys, we're here today with John Danaher. Huge honor for me and Plácido and Reese. And guys, John's here this week filming the Master the Move Sumi Gaeshi or Butterfly Sweeps. And John, I think this is such an interesting subject, especially for no-gi, because I think like sooner or later everybody's gonna play the butterfly guard.
Yes.
It's the most popular guard.
I think you're right. It's also one of those moves which truly does translate between gi and no-gi.
I agree.
Like, if you took a guy like Gordon Ryan, who's done the vast majority of his training no-gi through his whole career, probably one of the most likely first moves that he would be hitting on people in a gi would probably be something like Sumi Gaeshi. It translates really well. It's always been a fascinating sweep, I think, in jiu-jitsu. It appeals to so many people in so many different ways. Me personally, when I first began jiu-jitsu in the mid-1990s, American jiu-jitsu was very primitive back then. It was obviously very advanced in Brazil at that time, but in America it was primitive. To give you an idea of our situation, when I first joined up, I think there were like 4 or 5 blue belts in New York, the whole of New York.
That's crazy. Which year was that?
This is like 1995.
Okay.
And like early 1995. And I think there were 2 purple belts in the whole of the east coast of the United States.
That is crazy.
Which is insane to think of.
Insane.
And so essentially we were a class full of white belts. And in that time, understandably, the teachers wanted us to learn like the most basic things first. And so when we played guard position, we just understood guard as closed guard.
Right, because that was the only one.
Yeah, you lie down and you put your legs around somebody and you hold on and you play closed guard.
Yeah.
So if you said to us in 1995, play guard position, we just reflexively went to closed guard position. That all changed for me when a very talented Brazilian athlete came to join the Hensel Gracie Academy in New York to start training. This is Rodrigo Gracie. Now, he was a black belt in a time when there were almost no black belts, and we were raw beginners. And he played a completely different kind of guard. He played seated guard with his feet on the inside and swept people with butterfly sweep, Sumi Gaeshi. And I remember the first time.
Which year was that?
This is like around 1997,
okay.
96,
okay. 1 or 2 years later.
Yes.
Yeah.
So we're used to this guard position as this supine closed guard, and then suddenly you've got this guy coming in who's just sweeping everybody with his feet on the inside from a position you don't even think of guard position, like seated, like guard for us is your back is on the ground. And this had a huge effect on me. I saw immediately how effective this was. And what it showed very clearly is that this enabled you to play a bottom game which was much more proactive. Instead of holding on to the guy and waiting for him to move inside your closed guard, suddenly you had this guy who could come out and start shuffling towards someone and attacking from bottom position and sweeping people over. And if you don't know how to defend a Sumi Gaeshi, you got to go over every time. When you're just the helpless white belt, you got to fall every time. So I was one of Rodrigo's early training partners. He didn't have many people for him to work with, and so I was absolutely impressed by just how effective this move was. When I studied it more at that time, there were also some very exciting Brazilian athletes who were very good in this move. Fernando Tereré is an obvious example. He had a great Sumi Gaeshi. He used to launch people with it. And another great example was Leo Santos. He had a beautiful Sumi Gaeshi from that time. And I remember seeing it in competition, seeing these guys head and go, man, not only does it work on us, a group of white belts, but it works on the best people. It was very, very impressive to observe. And it had a completely different feel to it. And suddenly bottom position went from being like this passive, slow kind of game, which wasn't particularly exciting. Suddenly it was an aggressive game where you could launch people, and it was just completely revamped our thinking about bottom position. Since then, so many other great athletes have been impressive with it. Your great friend Marcelo Garcia, he had a legendary Sumi Gaeshi, knocked a lot of people over with that. Nowadays, among young athletes, you see Nicholas Marigali, Gordon Ryan obviously had a tremendous Sumi Gaeshi. I'll come back to talking about my athletes soon. And the talented European Adam Wojcinski, he's got a tremendous Sumi Gaeshi, knocks a lot of people over with it. So it's always been this big part of my game, and from the earliest days. And what I loved about it most of all came later in my career, after I met Dean Lister and the whole leg lock emphasis started. Suddenly you had a guard position which not only was very difficult for an opponent to leg lock you, because one of the traditional problems of closed guard is if your legs are on the outside, it's very easy to leg lock. You know, a good leg lock would just sit back and break your legs. Suddenly you had a guard where it was very difficult for them to attack your legs, but it was really easy for you to attack theirs, because almost all of the defenses to Sumi Gaeshi involve some kind of posting action where you're putting hands or feet out on the mat. Now, as we all know, anytime your hands and feet get away from the torso, they become vulnerable to submission holds. And so one of the big themes that I always used to push on my students is, you know, from the earliest days in jiu-jitsu, you get taught position before submission. But one of the big themes of my coaching career has been position and submission.
Yeah.
The idea that rather than seeing one coming before the other, the higher you go in the sport, the more you want to use them against each other, because most of the defenses to a positional move involve extension, and that makes you very vulnerable to some kind of submission threat. And the more you attack threats of submission, the more retracted people become, the narrower their base becomes, the easier it is to sweep.
It's a great combination.
So you want to use, you don't want to say only position before submission, you also want to say position and submission, and create the threat of one will always set up the other. And Sumi Gaeshi is the perfect example of this, because if you have me in any kind of Sumi Gaeshi type situation, my standard defense is going to be some kind of posting action. It's going to be something going out, and it's going to make me vulnerable in some kind of way in terms of submissions. And so when the youngsters came in to learn our submission grappling game, Gordon, Gary, Eddie, and Nikki at the start, and then further on as we progress in time, so much of their development was based around Sumi Gaeshi. I used to observe people talking in those early days, your students are so good at leg locks, and they missed the point that what made them dangerous with the leg locks is they all had a good Sumi Gaeshi. And then they fed off the defensive reactions to the Sumi Gaeshi, but they all learned Sumi Gaeshi first and then leg lock second. And that's a very, very important part of our game. So that was sort of like my personal history with Sumi Gaeshi. But I also, in this video, want to go over like why it makes so much sense for a developing athlete to learn it and master it. We've already talked about the idea of being proactive. And one of the key elements that I always loved about Sumi Gaeshi is that it's one of the quintessential examples of one move with many grips, okay? A big part of what we call mastery in jiu-jitsu is the idea of spending huge amounts of time on a single move. But I can't just do a single move with the same setups, because once they read the setups, they're going to resist me. But the beauty of Sumi Gaeshi is that you can do it from almost any grip, okay? You can do it from collar and elbow grips. You can do it from double shoulders. You can bring people in close and work from underhooks. You can go in with overhooks. You can do it out of front headlock. You can do it from a single grip around your training partner's neck. You can do it conventionally with your legs in a conventional configuration. You can also do it with cross configurations like Yoko Sumi Gaeshi and still take people up and over. And so it's one move. Sumi Gaeshi literally just means reversal to the corner, like you throw someone to the corner. But you can do it off an almost infinite number of grips, so that you can develop a real sense of spending huge amounts of time on a single move, but because it's so versatile with the grips, it's really hard for your opponent to read what is happening, because they see a plethora of grips in front of them, but ultimately they all lead back to the same move. So you get the benefit of huge amounts of training time into a single move, which is how you develop mastery. But you have such a wide array of setups that it's really hard for an opponent to read what is about to happen to them. It can be used anywhere, standing, ground, gi or no gi. It's incredibly versatile. That's why I put such a heavy emphasis for my students.
Yeah, no, and while you were talking about this, I was just thinking, like, the two examples that you gave, Tererê and Léo Santos, they both played with the hand on the belt, which was the gi, like, it was like overhook kind of thing. And then nowadays, this entire generation, especially no gi, is all about the underhook, or so it's. I think
but it shows just how versatile the gripping game can be with Sumi Gaeshi. But you're absolutely correct. I mean, Tererê was a relatively small man, but when he got that belt, everybody flew. And it's amazing how much leverage you can develop with these grips. Another reason why I put such a heavy emphasis on it, because Sumi Gaeshi is one of the few examples of a bottom position game where smaller people can beat bigger people reliably.
Right.
And the reason for that is because the posture involved with Sumi Gaeshi is so good for carrying weight.
Right.
Okay, the worst way to carry weight when someone's on top of you is to carry their weight directly on your chest.
Yep.
Okay, where they control the space underneath your arms. This is the worst kind of thing, where your body is extended and flat. Okay. The butterfly guard used for Sumi Gaeshi variations is the perfect example of a ball-like quality, where your knees are in so close to your chest that even just a short period of time after a hip replacement, I can easily carry someone's weight. And it's not because I'm strong, it's just because the body is positioned in such a way that the elbows are in close to the body, the chin is chucked into the chest, and the knees are very close to the chest. So in these kinds of situations, it's an easy thing for us to go in and carry someone's weight. And this is another reason why I favor it so much. I have a crippled leg, so there's limits on what I can do in terms of my body work. But it's no problem at all for me, even on my crippled leg, to carry even much heavier people, because the body position itself is so well suited to this. Your spine is rounded, elbows and knees close together, and this is exactly where you can carry someone's body weight successfully. So even when they come crowding in and try to press you, in these kinds of situations, it's so easy for us to move their body weight around and then take it out of position and get them moved to work. So this is another reason why I favor it so much.
Got it. And John, one comment that I would do here is, it's like I think with the gi, the person can choose if they would play the Sumi Gaeshi or not, but I don't know if you agree with me or not, but no gi, there's almost like no choice. Like if you do no gi, you will have to play Sumi Gaeshi butterfly at some point during the match or during your career or whatever. Do you agree with that?
I do, and I actually, I think not only is that true, but I think it's actually a strong feature of Sumi Gaeshi as a game. Part of the reason for this is because Sumi Gaeshi, perhaps more than anything else, is a quintessential example of a move that enables you to play a proactive game. Okay, because why? Because the setups of Sumi Gaeshi are so fast. Okay, if someone's in front of you, if I want a half guard sweep, there's so many things I have to do before I can get there. I have to first create a space between our bodies. I have to expose my training partner's lower leg. I have to move down into position, perform a lower leg shift, and only from now can I start to play my game. I had to go through like 3 or 4 steps just to begin the game. Okay, as opposed to Sumi Gaeshi, where someone can be at distance, you can go straight and you can grip and throw. Sumi Gaeshi is one of the few examples in jiu-jitsu where you can embody the judo maxim of grip and throw. You can just literally touch them, and they've got half a second to do something, and in that time you can throw them. And this means it becomes such a strong, proactive part of your game. Where if you can touch your opponent, you can sweep your opponent, and you see this being done in international competition. It's also a move, as I said earlier, where you can carry even a big man's body weight. A good example would be Gordon's Sumi Gaeshi against Josh Barnett. Josh is a big man, very, very strong. He's had tremendous success against jiu-jitsu players in the past. But when Gordon got into a good Sumi Gaeshi position and went through all the steps we'll look at in this video, even someone as big and talented as Josh could be swept by it.
Yeah, no, I agree. And the last question I would ask you is, like, for someone who's just starting the Sumi Gaeshi, just starting to learn the butterfly, where would you start with? Like, is it a move, or is it a sweep, or is it like a position? What would be the very first move you would teach someone like who's trying to master the Sumi Gaeshi?
First thing I would do is you want them to be effective. You want them to be able to go out in a sparring situation and toss their training partner or their opponent in a competitive sparring situation. So where I would start would be like, what kind of conditions have to be satisfied for a successful sweep against resistance, okay? And what you'll see is that there are certain very predictable things that are required. Your opponent's shoulders have to come over his knees, okay? A knee line is an imaginary line that joins your training partner's 2 knees together. A shoulder line is an imaginary line between your training partner's shoulders that joins the shoulders. Anytime the shoulders are behind the knee line, it's hard to hit Sumi Gaeshi. Even if I get my grips in place, it's hard to bring his head down into a position where you can sweep him. Okay? So the first thing we're looking for is to create a situation where his shoulder line is in front of his knee line.
That's super interesting.
Okay, that's a big visual cue. The other big thing you're looking for here is if this hand gets to the mat, it can potentially be a problem. Don't worry, in the video we'll show 1,000 ways to get around that problem, but it can potentially be a problem. Why? Because ultimately, to throw someone with Sumi Gaeshi, I have to make this shoulder go down and this shoulder go up. That's why we like double shoulder grip so much. Even if he posts out with his leg, it's going to be hard if I can rotate his shoulders through it. Anytime we can get those shoulders turning, Sumi Gaeshi is on. But when he goes to post on the floor, that can stop that action. Okay, so we need to have effective counters to it. Don't worry, there's 1,000 things we can do in terms of submitting people from there we look at in the video. But turning the shoulders is another big visual cue. Another one is getting the forehead to the mat. The further his forehead from the mat, the harder it becomes, basing, the sweep. But if I can take his forehead down to the mat, that's done with this knee here, bringing it forward, and he goes up and over. So when it comes time to sweeping someone against resistance, I'm constantly coaching the visual cues and the tactile cues that make it work. And you see there are certain repetitive patterns where if we can get the forehead to the mat, if we can make the shoulders turn, if we can get the shoulder line in front of the knee line, you're going to be very, very successful. And then you can also start doing something very important, which is to identify exactly why you fail with Sumi Gaeshi. It's one thing in jiu-jitsu to fail, it's another thing to fail and not know why you failed. I don't care if I fail, as long as I know why I failed. But when you fail and you don't know why, that's where real frustration comes from.
And then the big chance are going to repeat that.
Exactly. So when you know these things, you can start to identify the source of failure. So if I'm in front of a training partner and I let him get his hand to the floor, I know why my Sumi Gaeshi failed. Okay, but if I also know that if I can get his shoulder in front of his hand, well, then the Sumi Gaeshi can work. But what if the hand is locked out? Okay, well, then we might have to switch off to a different form of sweep. But knowing what these cues are enables a student to learn very quickly what things they have to, what conditions they have to satisfy to get the move working.
And they can pull different moves following them.
Then they can identify why they're succeeding, and perhaps more importantly, why they fail. And once you know why you fail, then the next time you try that move, you just cover that cause of failure, and you're going to be more successful.
Oh, I love that. And I love learning these hidden concepts because this is the type of move that I learned when I was a white belt, but I had never thought about this idea of the shoulder line, this idea of the forehead on the floor. So this is really fascinating.
It's one of the cool things about Sumi Gaeshi is you see it all around you, but if no one ever explains these things to you, this looks like a mystery. Like, why is this guy so good at Sumi? Why did he throw me 10 times with this move? And then it's like revealing the tricks of a magician. Then when you never see the magic trick the same way once you learn the reasons behind it.
That makes total sense. And I mean, like, all your team, this is like a giant percentage of when they're in the bottom, right? Like
this is it's literally right up there with like an elbow escape. Like, there's not many moves where I tell people, no, you have to learn this move. There's not many. I'm usually pretty liberal on this, but Sumi Gaeshi is one of the moves where everyone on the team has to learn it. Everyone has to be good. And interestingly, everyone has to be good on both sides. Normally,
they both move for both sides, or can be different options for both sides?
You got to be able to sweep left and right.
Not necessarily the same.
Not necessarily the same sweep, not necessarily the same grips, but you have to take in both directions. And normally I don't enforce this, but Sumi Gaeshi is one of the few offensive moves where this is enforced. But as I said, I don't think it's possible to be a great leg locker from bottom position without also being very good at Sumi Gaeshi. They're strongly linked. And the better you get at Sumi Gaeshi, the easier it's going to be to enter and finish your leg locks.
No, that makes total sense. Yeah, and just to finalize, I think that's kind of how you broke the ice in the world, that nobody was doing leg locks, and then you came and you changed that.
A lot of people didn't realize that one of the big shifts and my students brought into the leg lock game is before us, leg locks are almost always seen as a top position option against guard position. So if I played a traditional closed guard game, from Reese's perspective, leg locks in the 1990s and early 2000s was seen as a good option for him when I was playing guard position. They were mostly seen as a top position. And what I looked at was the idea that the most common reactions to Sumi Gaeshi are always going to be posts like so. But anytime the knees come apart, this is going to create situations where it's easy to go into leg attacks. And so Sumi Gaeshi was the key to separating people's knees and making leg lock gain from bottom become far more powerful as a weapon than leg locking from top. If you see my students, you'll see that we do occasionally do leg locks from top, but we're much more about leg locking from bottom position and pressure passing from top. And so we do mostly upper body attacks when we're on top, and mostly lower body attacks when we're on bottom.
And I think after your instruction about the leg locks, the whole no-gi scene changed, because nowadays all you see is like people running to sit as quick as they can and involving the legs and this and that. So
you remember something interesting? The first night you, me, and Michael Zenga met, and you guys asked me a question: what would you like to do as your first instructional video? And I know what you wanted me to say. You wanted me to say a leg lock video, because everyone wanted to know what do my students see with leg locks. And I said to you, no, I want it to be Sumi Gaeshi. And you were both very disappointed with my answer. You were like, nah, come on. So I did the leg lock video. But my point was that everything we do with leg locks is based on prior mastery of Sumi Gaeshi. And if you don't have that, it's going to be hard to leg lock people.
Took 8 years, but now we're there.
Now finally we're here.
So what he's telling us is he can be bought. That's what he's telling us, he can be bought.
No. That was because like at that time, the jiu-jitsu subjects that everybody was talking about was the leg lock. And you had never made a video in your life and that, so we knew that, and it was a huge success.
But it's kind of ironic that now, many years later, I got the one which is what I wanted to put out first, but here it is.
I agree. No, I totally agree. But
by the way, guys, I should note, we talked about Sumi Gaeshi as equally good gi and no gi. This video is exclusively in no gi. Okay, one day I would love to put out a Sumi Gaeshi video in the gi, because they're closely related, but there are some elements of grip which do change. I do believe that in the gi, Sumi Gaeshi gets even better. It's already an amazing move, but with the gi, it becomes even stronger as a move. There are things you can do. There are manipulations with the gi that take an already great move and take it to a whole different level. But this video is exclusively no gi, just to be aware of that.
There you go. Yeah, guys, it's coming out very soon at VGJFanatics.com. So, Master the Move, Sumi Gaeshi by John Danaher. And by the time you're watching, it's probably already there. So, make sure to check that out. And thanks so much, John.
Great to see you again.
Thank you, Placido. Thanks, Chris. Please help me out to grow my YouTube channel. Just click subscribe. And to watch more videos, just click under see more videos. I hope you enjoyed.
BJJFanatics.com. Use the promo code YouTubeFaria to get 10% off any instructional video. Improve your jiu-jitsu faster.